All right, welcome to another drive-through. We have the 1963 Stingray today, which is a really important car for me and the club. My dad, as I've mentioned in other shows, he had a love for Corvettes when I was growing up, but sold the Vet to buy the big Oldsmobile station wagon and took me to car shows, lusting after the cars that we didn't have. So my whole family has always had a thing for Vet. So amazingly, it was a long time before I got the right classic Vet for the club. The values of these things blew up, and there was a lot of junk out there getting sold for a lot of money. So it took me literally 8 years of kind of looking around and waiting for one to show up that was the right car at the right time for us to buy it, to buy one that worked for us. But finally, a few years ago, we put a 63 Corvette in the club. And this one is really special to me because we've really taken it and applied what we think is the kind of classic car club formula to make a real classic that you can drive. A lot of vintage cars, they're 99% nostalgia and 1% driving experience. When you get in and drive them and you have drum brakes and manual steering and a carbureted engine, it's a bit like driving a truck, and it's more just about the look and the feel of having the top down and get out there and driving. With this, we really wanted to crack it and deliver the experience that you expect from the car when you remember these beautiful convertible American cars from the 60s. And to do that, we put in modern drivetrain. So it's got a 2001 LS1 V8, fuel-injected, electronic ignition. It's all aluminum, so it's light. It's got a 5-speed gearbox. They did do disc brakes in some of the C2 Corvettes, but not in 63, so ours has disc brakes, has power steering, which wouldn't have been available in 63. So it's all the thing to make it so it's a car you can actually jump in and drive and enjoy and sort of live the dream you've had of driving a 63 Corvette, rather than the experience that a purely authentic one may deliver. All right, so driving the 63 Stingray, pretty straightforward actually. While we've got a modern drivetrain, we've kept the controls inside pretty simple. General tips of all classic cars: remember to scan the gauges just the way you would with your mirrors, so you're always aware of what's happening with the car, especially the temperature gauge. On this car in particular, 3/4 in the gauge is normal, so that's where you want it to see. It's about 200 degrees. The new LS motor does run a bit hotter naturally than the old motor did, so 3/4 in the gauge is okay. If you ever see the car overheating, you want to pull over and stop immediately. And don't trust the gas gauge below a quarter. Treat quarter tank like empty and fill up when you get to a quarter. Headlight operation, there's a pull-out switch to turn the lights on, and then there's a toggle that flips the lights up. They're hideaway lights that flip down. Just make sure you hold it until it gets all the way up, and the same thing that goes down. You may see one of the lights tip open a little bit. Just hit the button again and it'll lock it down a bit further. We did put AC in the car, really just for if someone was going to go for a longer trip and want to put the roof up and cool the thing down, or if you get stuck in the rain, you need to get the fog off the windshield. So you have a temperature control down here next to the console, a direction control, and a fan speed control. Your other bit of climate control is these vent windows. In classic cars, these things actually work really well. If you're driving along, you want to get some air in yourself, kick that all the way out and you get air blowing right across the front of the cabin. It actually cools you down as long as you're moving. It's got a 5-speed gearbox, so remember that. It's written on the dash here. Radio, we have a radio hidden in the glove box, which normally I don't like to do because it could be pretty inconvenient to get to it. But what we did this one is we got a radio that has Bluetooth, so you can hook up your phone or whatever to play Bluetooth on the radio. And if you pick a medium volume, you can then use the volume on your phone to change volume as you go. Car is pretty loud, so if you're on highway driving for a long time, you're probably not going to hear it, but when you get stuck in traffic, you want to put in some tunes. The handbrake on this car is a bit unique. You just pull it straight out to set it, and then to release it, you turn the handle 90 degrees clockwise and let it in. So when you actually get out on the road, you get yourself all set up and you're driving this thing, there are a couple things to keep in mind. Even though it is a modern fuel-injected motor and it runs really reliably, we did put a cam in that makes it sound like a vintage hot rod. And one thing, it does make it idle a little rougher. So when it's cold, it will, be hesitant to idle as smooth as you might like it to. It kind of picks up once you warm up, but just be aware of that. But that's part of why it still makes such a great sound, and you'd never know there was a modern engine under the hood. 390 horsepower. It doesn't sound like a lot of power compared to some of the other stuff we have in here, but in an old car with a really light, fiberglass body and skinny tires, it's a lot of power. And on top of that, being a modern fuel-injected motor, it's way more responsive than an equivalent horsepower carbureted motor from that era. So we didn't build it for power, but it turns out that it's really powerful. It's pretty quick. So just be aware of that when you put your right foot into it. You don't want to overwhelm those tires and start spinning, because it does still have the original 60s chassis geometry, and it's not going to handle like a modern sports car would. So be conscious, especially of the power delivery in this car. That covers everything on driving the car. We'll get out and show you how to do the top. So the fuel cap is beautifully concealed behind this cover in the back. It's a nicely done detail, but you'd never know it's there if you didn't know what you're looking for. So just lifts up and presses down. The top's pretty easy. There's a few steps. You got to reach in. There's a handle just on that side of the middle to lift this up. You grab the top and pull the whole thing out. Rest it up there. Push from the middle here to clip both latches, or latch on each side. So you give it a firm push down, make sure it's locked down. And then I would lock the back in first. This just pushes down into 2 holes and it clips in. You'll feel it ratchet. And then on the front, there's 2 clasps that hold it in. And there's a pin that goes into a hole that you have to line up. But pretty straightforward as you get there. It's just making sure you get the mechanism out in the right way. To release it, you put your hand in, and there's a tab you push on to pop up the back. You undo the latches at the front, fold it all back up, release the hatch again, and just drop it all in there and close it up. The trunk is actually just the space behind the top here. With the top up, there's actually a pretty decent amount of room. You still have some room with the top down, but it cuts it down. You have to just push stuff towards the front. But plan small duffels, I guess. Don't bring your big hard suitcases. For the most part, get out there and enjoy it. It's one of the best sounding, and I think one of the most beautiful classic cars we've ever had, inclusive of all the European stuff. This design seems to be universally loved by people, whether they're Ferrari guys, Porsche guys, American muscle guys, or whatever. And it's a real iconic car, and the driving experience now lives up to the look of the car as well.